President Carpenter, we are ready to start the meeting.
Why do I hear guitar music?
Code followed by the pound or hash sign. To enable audio controls.
Okay, I ran a little test. Apparently, if you're watching the board meeting on television, staff is doing some kind of sound test.
President Carpenter, we seem to be receiving some background sound.
We need to know if it's a virus, if it's going to spread back to our own computers.
Good
Or does
point.
that sound like urban myth? I don't think so, though. I think we're all hooked up. Somebody call Chuck.
Grant, are we ready to go, or are you still working on it?
I think Grant is calling Bunny Carpenter right now.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Okay, apparently there's a problem with Bunny's audio, so Grant is working with her to get it fixed, so if you could be patient, and we appreciate it.
You think we ought to at least start the meeting? Egon is the first vice president, can start the meeting, I think, and then let Bunny come on when she does.
Thanks. I was going to advise the same thing.
I'm not in a hurry.
Okay.
We don't look good on TV.
Of course, I'm also not on the TV. I mean, I'm not on the committee. The board. But just for my.
Let's find out from Grant if he can contact Bunny, and if he's able to fix it. If not, then I'll take over.
We really don't look good on TV.
Bunny, can you hear us now?
In my college days, it used to be that when the instructor didn't show up after 10 minutes after the class would leave. Egon, why don't you start?
All right, I'll start it until Bunny comes back. Okay, regular open meeting of the Board of Directors of the Golden Round Foundation of Laguna Woods, a California nonprofit mutual benefit corporation. 7th of July, 2020 at 9:43 a.m. This is a virtual meeting. It's not community center, at our homes, Laguna Woods, California. I'm calling this meeting to order. We have a quorum. Count here.
We do.
Okay, we have a quorum, so allegiance by Director Horton.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have the media present, Cheryl? I mean, are we on TV?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to call for the approval of the agenda.
I so move.
Egon, I have a comment. I would like to move something off the consent calendar, 11C, that has to do with the joint resolution regarding the COVID-19 temporary face coverings, and put it under unfinished business 12C.
Okay. We will move that. So ordered. All right. Other than that, we have asking for approval of the agenda. I think we had a second from Bert. Is that correct?
Well, you had the initial motion for me.
Okay. Could I have a second, please?
As amended, right?
Yes, as amended. Could I have a second, please?
I second.
Okay, thank you. Anyone opposed to approval of the agenda? Okay. That is passed unanimously. Now, asking for approval of the June 2nd regular open session minutes. Do I have an approval of the motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Yeah, are we?
Yes, Yvonne.
Are we taking a vote on this
We're
approval?
going to take a vote unless there's any. I thought you were going to make a comment. Okay, it's been moved. The second minutes be approved or be accepted. Do I have any opposition to that? So the minutes of June 2nd are approved unanimously. The Minutes of June 17th, special open meeting. Do I have a move to approve those minutes?
I move to approve the minutes for June 17th.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Bert, I think you're talking, but you're silent.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any vote against approving the minutes? So minutes of June meeting are accepted. So the report from the chair, I think we might leave. I don't have a report from the chair, so we might leave that for Bunny as a special comment. She needs it when she comes back. Thank you. The next, we'll have the VMS update from Director Brown.
Thank you. I will address, can you hear me all right? Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair, if you can hear us, and Egon, appreciate it, and Board of Directors and the executive staff from VMS as well as the support staff, thank you. For those who don't know, excuse me? Okay. Yvonne, you need to say something? No? Okay. So the Woods Village is partially self-managed. Everything except for the towers is managed through an entity known as Village Management Services. And we are comprised, the board is comprised of 3 appointees from the United Board, 3 appointees from the GRF Board, and 3 from the third. I am one of the 3 appointees from GRF, and I'm doing the periodic update on behalf of the VMS Board. The board is down 1 person, Dorothy Pasella, resigned recently, and so I assume we'll be hearing from United in terms of who the next appointed board member is. And the preoccupation of much of what has been going on at the board and the village in general has been management in the time of the pandemic. So we've had a couple of different things developed that have had to, where the VMS management has had to adjust accordingly, and have done a remarkable job, in my opinion, of getting things done from a virtual standpoint. So these meetings have, with all their glitches and hitches, we'll be perfecting them probably just about the time that we'll be able to meet in person again. But I appreciate everybody's the patience in getting all of this accomplished. And in addition to getting it done in terms of virtual meetings, since we can't meet in person for the time being, without certain restrictions, we've got. There was a report that we were given by Chuck Holland, who is he's the IT specialist and the information specialist, the chief information officer for IT and resident services. And he gave us an excellent presentation in terms of what was being done, not only in terms of sanitizing the workspace for those individuals that are coming to work at VMS, to keep everybody safe there, as well as to keep our community safe from any kind of community spread, which thankfully has not happened to any large degree at all. But he's also working on reconfiguring spaces throughout the VMS employment space, so that people, when they do come back on a more regular basis, will have distancing and minimal touch points, and the sharing of different not necessarily computers, but printers. And he's laid out he's done a whole different layout for everybody to stay safe when everybody does return eventually, and even as we are starting to staff up now. So that involves quite a bit of redesign and rethinking, and a lot of sanitation and ongoing sanitation. And he's got his hands full with that, but he seems to be on top of it all. Also, in terms of personnel, we have some reassignment, some reassigned duties, and Mr. Parker, I'm sure, will address this, or Ms. Foster, where internally we will have more capacity to do some project management. with some existing staff that's been where some of the duties have been reassigned, and then externally there's some procedures put in place to bring in project management on the bigger items when and if we need that. And in terms of manner alterations, we have a new director, Robbie Donquist is the manager. I said director, I meant manager. Manner alterations manager in the maintenance and construction department. And he is a licensed architect, and he's worked in the past as a general contractor with extensive building and renovation experience in the commercial and residence buildings. More than 25 years in the industry, and has quite a bit of experience in many different kinds of projects. So he will be overseeing the manor alterations and resale division, and he'll be the staff officer assigned to the United and Third Architectural Control and Standards Committee. He'll be located on the second floor for now, but will eventually be moved down to the manor alterations office. Also, we have BMS sponsored or organized a couple different trainings for us. There was an all boards training in terms of the trust, GRF Trust, and that will be continuing this week on the 9th. If people did not get notice of that, it was on the Monday meeting, and it's a continuation of the GRF Trust presentation is going to be continued on July 9th, Thursday at 1 o'clock, the virtual meeting. If you haven't gotten your link to that, please do, the board members, all boards, please do let, see, my email came from Cheryl Silva, but I'm not, I think it's because I was on the VMS board. So please let Siobhan know, Siobhan Foster, if you haven't gotten your link to that continued training. And I, for one, appreciate what Attorney Jeff Beaumont did in terms of the training for the trust and for the board orientation. For those of us that are new, getting oriented to the boards and the board operations and ethics and a lot of different things, as well as ongoing training for existing board members. And both of the trust training and the board training were very comprehensive, and a lot of questions were asked, and there's still yet some to be answered, and that's in the process. And finally, we had some discussion this last week about the emergency order that was put in place using the emergency powers of Davis Sterling by Third Mutual and United Mutual. And I understand that GRF is not on, it didn't sign on to it in the capacity that it's currently written, but the GRF is, you all know, you are the board, so we'll let who's ever going to talk about that later. And if I do have some comments as an individual, not as a board member. So whoever the tech person is that's involved in having me on this feed, please don't cut me off, because I need to be added to the list of people who will comment on the emergency order if what Judith just did didn't move it into executive session. If it's still on the open forum session, I have some comments during that time as an individual, not as a board member. And I said finally, but I do have one more thing. The village breeze did come out for January, and there's a lot of information in here on a lot of different topics, including comments from each of the presidents, and just lots of very, very helpful information. And I think we all owe a big debt of gratitude to Memorial Care for their sponsorship and publication of this excellent, and our media department for putting together such an excellent and informative packet. And if there's someone else involved in the sponsorship of this besides Memorial Care, I'm sure someone, Ms. Foster, if you could add on to that, I would appreciate it. And that's the end of my update. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. We'll move on to the CEO's report. Jeff?
Good morning, board, and hope everybody's well. Three items that I wanted to bring to your attention, and then I'll turn it over to Siobhan for her additions. Number one, we've been receiving a number of emails recently with regards to our tennis operations from the tennis players, noting that because of the warming up of the weather, they would like to see a shift of our operations from 12 noon to 4 o'clock to a 4 to 8 o'clock time frame. So last couple of days, we received several emails, and I think some of the board members have too. We started working on that effectively yesterday, putting together a new game plan, new strategy with staffing and moving people around and making sure that we could do this effectively. And I wanted to mention to the board that today, and for anybody watching, that effective Thursday, we'll be able to take reservation process for the new time frame from 4 to 8 o'clock in the early evening for tennis play. We're going to announce it on TV6 tomorrow so that people get the word out. Our protocol is changing just a little bit so that we can address that and staffing requirements necessary to make sure that we're implementing it to meet our standards that we had before. But the good news is we're able to accommodate that shift. So the change will be effective Friday with play, Thursday with reservations, and we'll take today for announcing it through the GRF as we are right now, and then tomorrow on TV6 so that we get the word out to everybody. And then Brian and his staff are also going to, if he has an email list, will be using that as another way to communicate with everybody. So by the time we get through Wednesday and have it communicated well, and Thursday we can start the reservation process, and Friday we'll start the play from 4 to 8. And that will continue until probably October. I'm not going to put a definitive time frame, but by the time we get into October, it gets a little cooler, and the lighting changes. As obviously we don't have all the courts lit. So, but we'll keep it in operation until then. Get through this warm weather period and give people a little bit of a break. So appreciate people sending in emails to us, and I appreciate Brian's staff getting right on it and being able to make the change rather quickly. So that's number one, and on the positive note. Number two, I wanted to mention, and Siobhan might be mentioning in more detail, but we're going to have our GRF capital review for 2021 tomorrow at 9:30. So look forward to having dialogue with you tomorrow with regards to, this is really the first budget item that we start the 2021 budget process off, talking about our capital projects for GRF. And we will look at not only the 2021, but you have the 5-year capital reviews that kind of gives you some insight about where we're looking forward, going forward in the next 5 years, and how it relates back to 2021. And then finally, the last thing I wanted to mention was, I know you're going to be talking about the emergency resolution that Third and United addressed, and that you have, in some cases, my understanding, addressed, but you have it back on your agenda. The reason I wanted to bring it up was I wanted to give you some additional stats that keep coming out. Yesterday, we had 634 new cases, COVID-19 cases in Orange County. This morning, that was for the day before. This morning's report is it's now up to 1,028 cases in Orange County. We were averaging about 150 to 250 cases on a daily basis, and we have seen a spike into the 500s, now 600s, 700s, and now obviously over 1,000 cases that are being reported on a daily case. The importance of that is we are now at 634 hospital beds that are being utilized throughout Orange County, which is taking us up very in our high percentage area, and over 203 ICU cases. And as you probably are well aware, the more cases you see, the lag time then becomes the hospitalization. And the concern that Orange County Health has, as well as state of California, is the impact on the capacity of Orange County hospitals to handle all of the COVID-19 cases and especially the ICU cases, as well as other cases that are germane to people who have either accidents or have conditions that need to be treated, such as heart attacks or strokes or anything like that. So it is a concern for Orange County Health. There was a good article in the Orange with regards to this issue, and just recently that came out. So just be aware of that, and noting that these cases are, we're seeing extreme numbers recently going up. And so I wanted to provide that to the board prior to your dialogue on your issue. And with those three issues, I'll turn it over to Siobhan. I know she has a few more.
Thank you, Jeff. Honorable President and members of the board, actually this morning I'm going to turn over my time to the Orange County Mosquito and Vector Control District. This morning we have Laura Young, who is the Director of Communications for the district, and she's going to be providing an update on the importance of do-it-yourself mosquito control efforts within the village. So, Ms. Young?
Hi, and thank you all for your time. I hope everybody can hear me well. So I wanted to provide you an update on what is occurring throughout the county, but also more locally in Laguna Woods. As far as mosquitoes, if you're seeing an increase in mosquitoes, why that is, and then what you can convey to your residents and your members, and how they can do and how we can help. So we are a special district, and we control for a lot of different vectors, but I'm going to focus on mosquitoes today. So if you can go to the next slide. We have been a special district since 1947, so we control for mosquitoes, rats, red imported fire ants, and flies. Currently, we have suspended our rat program, and we typically do this during the summer months due to the large increase in mosquito calls and the increased risk of mosquito-borne disease that we have in the summer months. So go ahead and advance forward. I'm really going to focus on what we do and then what you as a board members can do and what you can convey to your residents, because that's really the key in how to control for mosquitoes. So we do a series of mosquito control, and that includes treating for wetlands, marshes, any city infrastructure like best management practices, drains, gutters that maybe have standing water, and then nurseries. We also have an extensive pool program, so if any pools are out of service or fountains or spas, then we typically will go and have those on a treatment cycles. And then the last element, which is the backyard and small sources, is really where we focus and try to get the residents engaged, because that's the area that breeds the largest amount of mosquitoes and is the hardest to get to. So if we can move forward to the next slide. So we do our tasks through a variety of ways, and one of them is teaching residents how to find sources and then remove those possible sources. We've typically in past years done that through outreach and education. Now we've gone virtual just with the COVID situation. We can't get out to every community. We also do disease surveillance, so we do have mosquito surveillance traps out in your community, and that's to find two things: to see what the number of mosquitoes are in your community and to see if those mosquitoes have any disease in them. And I'm going to talk about what disease is and the types of mosquitoes we're trapping. The third element we focus on is control. Now, control is removing sources. With having such a large community, we cannot get out to every resident's property, inspect every patio, especially with the number of potted plants and small sources available and in Laguna Woods. It really becomes a resident-driven program in order to reduce mosquito sources. But for those large sources like Aliso Creek and the other waters running away, we do either stock them with mosquito fish or provide some type of control for those creeks so that they don't breed mosquitoes. If you can go to the next slide. So there are 27 different types of mosquitoes in Orange County, but I'm really going to focus on two types of mosquitoes because these are the ones that are going to be impacting your community. The first one is what we call the Culex mosquito, or the southern house mosquito. This mosquito tends to like large sources, bites during dusk and dawn. So when you were talking about those tennis courts and moving those times later in the evening to have a cooler period of time, that's exactly the time in which they prefer to bite. So that's when we would recommend, people taking precautions and wearing repellent when they're out during those times. The Culex mosquito also needs water to start its life cycle. So that's key. So if you don't have water, you don't have mosquitoes. And then they take about a week of time to breed from egg to adult when in the hot weather that we're having right now. Thing with these mosquitoes is they prefer to feed on birds. So humans are an incidental host or feeding. They will only bite a person when they cannot find a bird to feed on, and they typically do this outdoors. Our Aedes mosquitoes are the ones that are really impacting your community. And the reason they are is because they actually prefer to breed in small backyard sources. So that's the flower pot saucers, bromeliads, lucky bamboos, even things like if you have a container outside and you're rooting some plants to replant them, things like that. If you have any, just storage outside that can hold water, if you have grandkids that come visit and you have toys outside, those are things where we find breeding for the Aedes mosquitoes. They prefer to bite during the day, although they will bite in the afternoon and early morning as well. Now, their preference is to bite mammals, so people, and their biting habit is they will bite you multiple times within a short period of time. So that's, if any of you have experienced any bites on your lower legs, on your feet, and you saw that they swelled up, or you had a more severe reaction to a mosquito bite than you typically do, that was the Aedes mosquito and their bite. Now, the unique thing about the Aedes mosquito is that they do not need water to start their life cycle, but they do need water to complete it. So they can lay their eggs in a dry pot, in a dry flower saucer, and then once that fills with water, then it can begin their life cycle, which makes them very challenging to control from our perspective. Their breeding time is the same, about a week, but they can complete their life cycle both indoors and outdoors. So for most people that say they're getting bit indoors, if you're keeping your screens and your windows closed and you're still being bitten inside, or you're seeing mosquitoes inside, you're most likely breeding them inside your home as well. If we can go to the next slide. And so this is the southern house mosquito, and it's just brown in color. Really not going to ask you to identify a mosquito. If you see a mosquito, just go ahead and kill it. And then go ahead to the next slide. But I do want to show you their life cycle. So they do lay their eggs, and it takes them about a week to go from the egg to the larva to the pupa to the adult. Now, to give you a reference, just one bottle cap of water can breed hundreds of mosquitoes, and you can see the larva in there. They'll go for different sources, but just know that that's all they need to finish their life cycle. And then go to the next slide. So in Orange County, our concern with this type of mosquito is that it does transmit West Nile virus. And we've had West Nile virus in our community since 2004. And in 2019, we had a relatively mild year. You'll see most of the West Nile virus activity up in the northern part of the county. However, we do have some cases, and we did have a positive in Laguna Woods last year as far as the mosquito, not a person. And in that, our concern is that Laguna Woods has a at-risk community where what we consider for West Nile virus at risk is 55 and over, and those are the population or demographic that typically, if there was going to be a more severe reaction, would have it. Most people that get West Nile virus will never show any symptoms. For those that do, which is a small 20 percentile, they might have a slight fever, and then there's an even smaller 2 percentile that may have more severe symptoms and require hospitalization and long-term care. And that's what we call West Nile virus encephalitis. So that means swelling of the brains, can lead to death, paralysis, and other long-term health needs. So moving forward, so with West Nile virus, that's our concern, and we want to make sure that you as board members and leaders in your community can pass this information along, that why mosquito control is important and why people should do their parts to help control for standing water in the community. So going to the next slide. So our other mosquito is the Aedes mosquito. This is the one that's a really aggressive day biter. This mosquito can transmit Zika, dengue, chikungunya, yellow fever, a very poor transmission of West Nile virus, but in some rare instances can, and then dog heartworm. So with this mosquito, although they can transmit these viruses, the good news is these viruses are not in the community or not in Orange County right now, so we don't have local transmission of them. But we do have the mosquito, and in most years we have people traveling to countries that do have these viruses, so the risk is still there. With these mosquitoes, it's really essential that everybody do their part to control for standing water and check their yards weekly. That's the only way we can control for these mosquitoes, because we cannot have, we don't have the staffing available to go out to every home to check their property weekly. And then going to the next slide. So just showing you how these mosquitoes breed. They do lay their eggs on water lines in dry pots. They can lay them in water too, but they prefer that. And then again, it takes 1 week to go from egg to adult. You'll see these mosquitoes are a little bit smaller than the West Nile virus mosquitoes, and they are striped. So you'll see black and white stripes on them. Going to the next slide. So these mosquitoes were introduced in 2015, and they've rapidly spread. They're bookended on both ends of the county. In 2020, we anticipate that we have 140 square miles infested with these mosquitoes, and then we anticipate that the whole county will have some impact within the next few years. Now, the good news with these mosquitoes is they don't fly very far, so if everybody does their part in a community, you can reduce the abundance of these mosquitoes and have very minimal impact. But all it takes is 1 or 2 households not to search for water, and they can impact the whole community. So if we can go to the next slide. So their breeding sources for these Aedes mosquitoes are really these small sources. Fountains, definitely, lucky bamboo, plant saucers. Bromeliads are that lower right-hand side. They're a plant that actually holds water in the middle of the plant, so they really lay their eggs in that, and they enjoy it. It's a nice small source that can't be found. You don't generally see a lot of tires in your community, but that is a source. But we do see a lot of leaf-holding plants and a lot of flower pots with flower saucers, and those can easily be remedied by having them dumped out or by putting some type of sponge-like substance to soak up the excess water, or just not over-watering, so that only watering what that plant actually needs. And then moving to the next slide. So really, when I'm coming on to these board meetings and hoping that I can get you all as leaders in your community to do is to convey these messages to the residents in Laguna Woods, to not grow plants in water-filled buckets, to remove saucers from underpotted plants when able to, and when not, to remove that water weekly, or put some type of sponge or absorbent in that plant saucer to eliminate that standing water. Removing bromeliads, those are especially, people love them in their homes. They're very hardy plants, but they can breed mosquitoes as well as lucky bamboo. And then making sure to scrub containers that are outside that can hold water, and storing them somewhere where they don't get any irrigation water or accidental overflow from sprinkler systems. So moving forward. And then from a maintenance standpoint, and we've worked with Siobhan and her team as well to, provide some education from a maintenance standpoint, and helping us become aware of if there's any waterways or channels or gutters that have standing water that cannot be removed, that we can identify those and put those on our treatment cycles. And then making sure the landscaping allows for plants that don't hold water and would not be a mosquito source. Moving to the next slide. So I'm really hoping that we can work together with your community and all communities within Orange County, but especially with Laguna Woods, as you provide a very unique situation in having a lot of residents in a very small space, but very active residents in your community, and working together to talk with the neighbors in the community to pass this message along, to also convey to them that mosquito control is not a sole responsibility, but a shared responsibility, with residents doing their part and then the vector control doing their part in helping with those large sources. And then also reducing those sources of mosquito breeding. So making sure to eliminate what we don't need and can hold water. And then more, the key part is, I know we're all sort of stuck at home and within our communities with these stay-at-home orders, but when you're outside enjoying your evening walks or your early morning walks, to make sure you're using the EPA registered repellents when you're outdoors to prevent those bites, and wearing long sleeves and light colored clothing and long pants to prevent mosquito bites. And then going forward, and then these are just the recommendations. I've already gone through them through the presentation, but these are the messages we often convey to our residents, and that's dump and drain. And our campaign this year for our 2020 summer was tip, toss, and take action, which is tip out any containers holding water, toss out anything you don't need in your backyard, and then take action by wearing repellent and talking to your community about mosquito control. And then the next slide is my contact information. So if you're interested in getting more information, I didn't want to take up too much of your time, but if you also want any content to distribute to your residents, we're happy to develop that for you. We've worked with Siobhan. They put a great article in the magazine a couple of months ago, outlining our checklist and all that. So I'm available for any questions if you have any, and or if you feel more comfortable emailing or calling me, you can do so as well. And that's all I have.
Honey, go ahead. You have a question?
Can I speak?
Yes, in fact, if you want.
Can you hear me?
I can hear
yes?
you.
Okay. I think this is a great presentation, and the only comment that I want to make is the removal of saucers under the plants. And you did advise people, to make sure that they wash the saucer and keep from having water in there. But people cannot remove the saucers underneath the plants. And the reason why I'm saying this, maybe if it's the plants on the ground, but if it's in a balcony or an area where it could cause damage, water damage, then it is required. There's resolutions that have been passed by the mutuals that basically say that a saucer is required under any plant. So I just wanted to make everybody sure that they know that, and that they don't remove the saucer. Okay, thank you.
Right, and I just wanted, that's why we actually, when we were talking with VMS, and we changed our language because we would always recommend removing saucers, and now we say remove saucers when able, and when
right.
you're not, to keep the saucer dry and or put an absorbent material in there to prevent any standing water.
Thank you.
Laura, is there any program that takes care of or works along Aliso Creek, which runs through part of our area, but also runs through a large number of other communities, and later in the summer has standing water because the flow really? Is there any program for that?
Yes. So Aliso Creek is actually on a 10-day treatment cycle as far as from our perspective. So we have someone out in the community checking different sections of the creek within 10 days. And the misconception is that when we go out and we do an inspection and treatment, it'll change the appearance of the creek, and that's not correct. So the creek will always have standing water. You may see algae in it, you may see cattails in it, and that part will not change, but there will be no mosquitoes coming out of it because we've conducted a treatment on it.
Thank you.
Any other questions I can answer?
All
right, I want to thank you all for your time, and Siobhan has all my contact information, so if anything comes up, please feel free to contact me.
Okay, so Bunny, since you appear to have good audio now, if you would like to take over the meeting, you can do so. We are at number 9.
Okay, I can do that with understanding that if I get cut out again, okay, that Egon, you'll go ahead and take over. Okay, there seems to be a problem, and it's not a problem with my computer. So anyway,
can you back up to item 6, which is your comments?
Okay, I will do that. Basically, what I wanted to do is announce the resignations. It was unfortunately 4 GRF directors resigned effectively June 18, 2020. Beth Parrott, Annette Soul, Pat English, and Joe Fitzcamp. And most of you know these directors and the work that they contributed to this community. Pat served 2 boards, United and GRF, and both Beth and Annette served 3rd and GRF and Joe GRF. Their decision to resign was a personal one, and I wish them the best. A personal one. Who's speaking? Hello? My audio is on. It was.
You're fine. Go ahead. The audio is turned off now.
That was Yvonne. She stopped.
Can I speak?
Yes.
Can I speak?
Yes.
You know what? I'm looking at here, and you guys are messing with my audio.
You're the chair. You decide.
Okay. So I want to continue. The decision to resign was a personal one, and I wish them the best of luck in all their future endeavors. And GRF will truly miss them. So the other item that I wanted to announce was basically on June 17th, at a special open meeting, new officers were elected. I remained president. Egon Gardhoffner is first VP, Bert Maldo, second VP, and Judith Troutman as secretary. The treasurer's position is now open until after elections. And I just wanted to say yesterday there were 19 applicants were picked up for the GRF position. So can I go back to also the approval of the agenda? I didn't hear what was being said, and I just want to make sure that with the approval of the agenda, that on the consent calendar, it was removed 11A, joint resolution regarding COVID temporary face coverings. Was that removed, Judith?
Yes, it was. And it was moved to unfinished business, which would be 12C. Wait a minute, sorry. It was unfinished business, 12C, correct. So it's moved to 12C. Yeah, we did that.
Okay, thank you. All right. So I can go ahead and take over if everybody can hear me clearly. And the next item would be number 9, correct? Would be the open forum. And how many speakers do we have, Grant? Staff? How many speakers do we have?
speakers. We have 6 speakers.
6 speakers? Okay.
Okay,
All right.
so,
Basically,
President Carp,
if we have 6 speakers, they're allowed 3 minutes each speaker. And at this time, the speakers may address the Board of Directors regarding items not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the Board of Directors of the Golden Ring Foundation. There is a 1-page limit per speaker, and a speaker may only address the board once during this period. The board reserves the right to limit the total amount of time allotted by the open forum. Members should, and they already know who they can call or email to request to speak. So I only want to mention, out of courtesy, please do not mention any names in your comments, okay? So I'll turn it over to Becky to organize basically the speakers and so that we can hear their comments.
okay. Thank you, President Carpenter and esteemed members of the board. Our first speaker is Carol Tanner in matter number 5080. She said, please inform us residents at the beginning of the meeting, specifically why 4 board members have resigned at the same time. We have a right to know. Second speaker is Joseph Italiano, matter number 2183P as in Paul. His request is, now that we have new mask rules, I suggest we ban leaf blowers in Laguna Woods. Every day, crews are using leaf blowers on the sidewalks in the flower and shrubbery beds, manor landings, laundry rooms next to open windows, throwing up into the air dust, dirt, pollens, animal droppings, herbicides, pesticides, as well as the accompanying exhaust pollution and noise pollution. Are viruses also being thrown up in the air? Maybe. I think it is in your creative power to make changes to reduce the elimination, the detrimental effects of leaf blowers, and to do this with little or no economic impact, but with a significant change in the quality of life for all concerned. Many cities, including Irvine, Newport Beach, Laguna Beach, Orange, Los Angeles, and dozens more, have either banned leaf blowers in their entire or limited their use. And what is Laguna Woods doing about this issue? Do you think we should? Okay, next one is from Cash Akrakar in manner 201E, and he had a page that he had put out. It's regarding the GRF recognized trustor assets. Since the inception of our community, GRF has neglected the trustors' priceless assets and knowledge and experience of our retirees members, bringing in with them, and then unfortunately take it with them to their graves, as they don't know how to utilize it. Among us, we have retired CEOs, COOs, lawyers, engineers, accountants, manufacturing experts, and I can go on and on and on. Combined, we possess over 500,000 man-years of exceptional expertise that GRF has until today not recognized. GRF has destroyed for the last so many years this valuable national asset and buried it within its residents, especially during these pandemic times when unemployment is sky high and many companies are closing their doors. These assets, our knowledge base, can be tapped in exchange for our retirees wanting to disseminate their knowledge and know-how to leave a legacy. What better can we provide our community with such an all-experienced talents to resolve problems and provide project assistance to local companies? And while doing so, we can get a small donations to support the badly needed funds for the village infrastructure. All I'm asking is to assign me to take the initiative for GRF to organize selecting quality talents of about 50 people within 1 year to provide their knowledge and expertise from their past lives back to the local community. I will need one half of the room under the pool deck in Clubhouse for 50 chairs a table, and some setup for coffee and cookies, a sound system, a safe place to store confidential material, and zero financial assistance. I will build the necessary infrastructure for GRF on a volunteer basis and to see what it becomes a perpetual establishment. All extra funds generated from this activity shall be donated to the mutuals and to Laguna Woods Foundation. There is a company soliciting for this talent at $250 to $1,000 per hour of work. It is time we recognize the unique experiences that our retirees have, and GRF proceeded to formalize it with my group of volunteers. Outside organizations are eagerly approaching our residents to tap into this resource already. You owe me answers either for or against or these lines. I will not quit until I get it and keep bringing this issue every chance I get. Cash Akrakar. Okay.
Stephanie.
Next member is John Beckett at 364Q. And his writing was, I was a member of the GRF board when the plan to remodel the Performing Arts Center was first proposed. Staff alerted us to a couple of problems. The scaffolding backstage was unsafe, and the auditorium was wasting energy. We agreed to fund these repairs. Somehow, a minor maintenance project turned into a major remodeling project. An architect was hired, and blueprints were drawn. Last month, the majority of the GRF directors voted to award the contract for $5.5 million, but they failed to obtain the consent of the mutual boards. Several GRF directors demanded that President Bunny Carpenter sign the contract. Fortunately, President Carpenter said no, not until the mutual boards give their consent. And a meeting of the 27 mutual directors was called, and they refused to give their consent. Ordinarily, this type of dispute would end up in court. Thanks to President Carpenter's courage, we saved a boatload of attorney's fees. I hope the new GRF directors will follow her example. Next member comment is Jenny Frimmer, 881A. Questions and comments to be read during my allotted 3 minutes. Number 1, where can I obtain a copy of the Performing Arts Center PAC maintenance upgrade contract and a copy of the contract schedule? Number 2, has a contract attorney been retained to review the PAC contract before signing and building begins? Number 3, do you expect cost overruns for the PAC upgrade, and if so, GRF approved an allowed percentage amount for overrun, and if so, how much? 10%, 15%, 20%? Number 4, due to clubhouses being closed, no cost for shower or bathrooms used in pool changing rooms, significant money saved for furloughed employees, decreased electric demands and expenses, limited janitorial costs, limited bus services costs, et cetera, et cetera. Can Laguna Woods Village residents expect a rebate from GRF for our HOA assessments paid in full during the month, even when it was closed due to COVID-19? Number 5, considering transparency, the Freedom of Information Act plus the guarantee to Laguna Woods Village residents money would be saved by installing a $3.9 million solar system. How can residents obtain a copy of the full financial report to date showing the expenditures and savings? Last member comment. Maxine McIntosh, 68C. I'm very grateful for the strong and correct leadership provided by Buddy Carpenter, Judith Troutman, and others. Now perhaps this board can take a long look at the needs of clubhouses, Clubhouse 3, also known as the PAC, remembering the financial warnings by both our current CEO, Jeff Parker, and the former CEO, Brad Hudson. Both men warned of the impossibly high cost of renovations of clubhouses. We now know that our assessments will not cover that which is unnecessary. I hope you will look at our buildings as needing just good maintenance. The plans for the tennis building, much newer than many of our clubhouses, could be modified to address only necessary repairs and painting. Many thanks, Maxine. That is all. Thank you.
Do we have any comments?
Please recognize Stephanie Brown. She requested that earlier. Bunny, you take over again. Would you please recognize Stephanie Brown for member comments? She requested that earlier in the meeting.
Yeah, I request
Yeah.
that to Ms. Andre.
Yes, please. Becky, would you go over with the comments of allowing Stephanie Brown to speak? Becky? I will allow. I will allow. Go on.
President Carpenter, I don't recall her exact comment. I don't know if she is still on the meeting.
I'm here.
Okay.
My comment pertains to a particular item on the agenda. Do I wait until that time? Or, yeah, I think I'm at 11C. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for recalling me. Whoever did that, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any member comments at this point in time? And any director I'm okay. Are there any directors that would like to comment on member comments?
I'm a member. I want to comment on the open floor in the open floor room.
Okay, it looks like that the comments were not. We didn't complete all the comments. So, Andre, please speak.
To talk. Let Andre talk.
Yes.
Okay. I'm talking about the Creek music event. Yesterday I went over there and I saw people gathering there, musicians playing. Although it's a little bit less crowded, but there are indeed people there. They are all wearing face masks. They behave very well. But based on your resolution, it's a crowd gathering. So I'm not sure, should I talk about it here or talk about there? This is a report of what's happening there, and I don't think it follows that resolution. And security came over, and they didn't cite any violations. So I'm confused because I thought we are not allowing any large crowd gathering, and any musician playing will be cited. So I am not sure what I should tell the crowd at this point. Okay, that was my question.
Okay, Bunny, that is on the agenda, the resolution. We will be addressing that, Andre, in 12C. And it's on the agenda.
Okay, I will address that at that time then. Thank you.
And so I have two comments for open forum, if you're done.
Okay.
I want to Ash Aquapar. What he said was absolutely correct. I remember back when we gave PCM the walking papers and wanted to go to self-management. And just one of the big factors was so we can do exactly just that. We could cash in on the expertise that's in this village, saving a lot of employee dollars. So it's unfortunate that that's not being utilized, but that was one of the big reasons we wanted to go to self-management. And now I think we're back to where we're not really being self-managed here. So I wanted to touch on that. And then Jenny, she had 5 questions. I just want to respond to the one on the PACT. If you want, all the questions about the PACT will be answered. They're on my agenda for July 13th. It is an open meeting at 1 o'clock, and you may get the link for that if you just ask staff for the link. And so that's July 13th at 1 p.m. virtual meeting, and everything you mentioned is going to be covered in that meeting. Okay, so the contract is sort of iffy, whether that has to be in a closed meeting or not, but we're still working on that. So, but all the other questions will be covered on that day, so please attend. And that's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you.
I have a comment I have a comment on Joe Italiano's comments about the leaf blowers
Okay,
application. I think it would be good to look into something less environmentally obnoxious than leaf blowers, especially since so many other communities are going into it. Obviously, the opposite answer would be some sort of large vacuum device that they would usually they clean off the sidewalks and stuff like that with the leaf blowers. You can do the same thing with the truck. Anyway, something to look into for the mutuals and us over the long term. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to comment? Okay, if there's no other people that wish to, board members that wish to speak, we will move on to the consent calendar. So all matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by the board by one motion in the form listed below. In the event that an item is removed from the consent calendar by members of the board, such items shall be subject to further discussion and action by the board. So the item is recommended from the Finance Committee, consistent with its statutory obligations. A subcommittee of the board consisting of the treasurer and at least one other board member reviewed and approved preliminary Golden Rain Foundation financials for the month of May 2020, and by this vote ratify that such review be confirmed in this month's board meeting, open session meeting. Okay? And the other item for the consent calendar is resolution to update GRF committee appointments. So basically, this is by consent and does not require a vote. So the next item, I don't think doesn't require a vote. Okay. The next item is
Madam Chair, yes, the consent calendar, since it was amended, we do require a vote on the amended consent calendar. Only because it was...
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Judith. I will ask for a motion to approve the amended consent calendar.
I so move.
Second.
Are there any objections? Do we need a second on this?
I think we already did have a motion when we initially discussed the consent calendar.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, are there any objections?
May I have questions?
Okay.
If we look at the strategic planning committee,
He's out of order, Madam President. He's out of order.
Yes, I know. We are on the consent calendar. Okay, and basically,
You're not a board member.
Okay.
We cannot ask questions.
Not at this point in time. You can ask a question when we get to the item on the agenda that you wish to ask a question on. Okay. So basically, if there are no objections, okay, then the consent calendar is approved. Okay. So the next item is 12, unfinished business, and do I hear a motion to adopt the resolution established and revised GRF rules of the board meetings? And the initial February, initial notification, March, updated April, referred back to committee. Then the May postponed to the next committee, June, reintroduced, July reintroduced, 28-day notification for the member review comment to comply with civil code. It has not been satisfied. So we are reintroducing the board rules because there were so many changes. So Judith, please read the resolution.
Okay. Golden Rain Foundation of Laguna Woods Board Resolution regarding the adoption of not temporary COVID. No, we're not reading that one yet. We moved it. I apologize. Going to 12A. Okay. I'm so sorry. One minute. Okay. Resolution 90-20-XX. Golden Rain Foundation Rules of Board Meetings. Whereas the Open Meeting Act, Civil Code 4900 to 4950, provides an outgoing right for each member of Laguna Woods to participate in the governance of the community. And whereas the Golden Rain Foundation Board of Directors recognizes the need to facilitate effective, efficient, and orderly board meetings for the benefit of the community while protecting members' rights to observe and participate in the governance process. And now therefore be it resolved on July 11th, 2020, the Board of Directors of this corporation hereby approves the Golden Rain Foundation rules for board meetings as attached to the official minutes of this meeting, and resolve further that Resolution 90-11-135, adopted on November 22nd, 2011, is hereby suspended and is entirely and canceled. Suspended in its entirely and canceled. Resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out the purpose of this resolution. Fiduciary initial notification revised on March 3rd, 2020, and revised again on April 7th, 2020, and then postponed on May 5th of 2020, and reintroduced again in June. So this was a 28-day notification for member review and comment to comply with Civil Code 4360 has been satisfied. I move this resolution be approved.
Second to move.
Bunny, we can't hear you if you're talking. And counsel,
okay, can you hear me now?
For any questions?
Okay, right now I'm asking for discussion at this point, and Kelly's here to answer any questions. And I know that Bert submitted some suggestions and recommendations. Some of it has to do with editing, but I'm asking Bert, can he hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, can you go ahead with the suggestions that you have?
Okay, good. On paragraph 2C, okay, we say who is not a member, and I would suggest that we, rather than being negative, be positive and say that a member is a stockholder in a cooperative or an owner of a condominium. A member may also be a person given the power of attorney of an estate containing a member. So that's the first change. It's the first time I think we've talked about the power of attorney of the estate. Secondly, paragraph 2F, the member's right to speak, and that's grammatical. Strike the statement where members are not allowed to discuss items not on the agenda, and then add to the first sentence after the word topic, except any item on the agenda. That's grammatical, basically. 2F3, strike the second sentence completely and add after the word second, members may be called upon to speak on the agenda item only after the board members have spoken. Because this is typically the way we have been done it. We do not allow members to speak until all of the board members have had an opportunity to speak or who have wanted to speak. Okay, item 2K5, where it says motions to be amended. This is more grammatical. Change the beginning to read, an amended motion may also be amended once. Item 2L, board comments. Okay, question, the third bullet. And I have a question on that. Are the words of the first two bullets inclusive to the introductory statements on all agendas? And if not, they really need to be added to all agendas because they are not there now. Item 2M4 says, end of the last sentence states that the chair shall call for a motion to close debate. But can't any board member, I think that this is allowed by any board member, and it certainly, when it happens, it requires a vote. And I think it's, what, 2/3 of the board have to basically vote in favor. And the last was paragraph 3D, agenda packets. And it says, last sentence stating that the agenda packet shall not be distributed in electronic form. I think that is meant for members, but it is distributed to directors. So that statement as it's currently written is not totally correct. That's it.
Bert, could you be so kind as to email all that to me? I'm hearing these for the first time, so I didn't want to interrupt you. There's some great suggestions in there. Others I might want to tinker a little bit with.
I certainly will.
Thank you.
Judith, did you have some comments? No?
No, I do agree with everything Bert said. I have no problem making those changes after Kelly's opined on them to make sure they're written in legal format and there's no ambiguity like we've been having. So.
Okay.
Thank you. Bert, if you're able to email those to me this morning, I may be able to go through those before the closed session today, depending on what else we've got going.
I'll do this right after the close of this meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Okay. I'd like to basically say that I'd like to get this approved based upon the comments and review with Kelly. I don't think there are that many drastic changes. Some as grammar, and maybe a couple of clarifications in there. And so I don't see any reason why we can't approve it based upon the contingency of adding these items to the board rules. Judith.
I'd like to correct or restate my motion to include approval dependent upon changes made by Bert Maldell and approved by Kelly Richardson, or opined on by Kelly Richardson, so that we could approve it today based on those changes, unless someone else here has an objection to anything Bert said.
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor. Now, I can't see everybody's hand, so I'm going to depend on staff,
Bunny, why don't you poll? There are only 5 others. So, in fact, there are only, 5 of us. So why don't you just poll the vote?
Hold the vote?
Yeah, ask each individual member.
There's 6 of us.
Okay, so you want me to, okay. So you said call the vote. I'm sorry.
Right.
Okay. Egon.
Yes.
Egon, okay.
Okay. Judith?
Yes.
Bert?
Yes.
Don? Yes. Yvonne? Yvonne, yes. She can't, I think she's going to, I can't vote for it. Yvonne? Yvonne?
Tell her to wave her hand.
Yes. And myself, I'm going to vote yes.
Yes.
So,
yes. Okay, nobody.
Okay, now I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So, so the rules, the board rules passes based contingent upon the review of the information that Bert has, review and incorporation of the information that Bert has provided for us. So we can go to the next item. And this would be up again for 28-day review. All right. The next item is, do I hear a motion to adopt the resolution for a GRF transportation ADA policy? The 28-day rule has been satisfied. So Judith, please read the resolution.
Resolution 90-20XX. Whereas the Golden Ring Foundation currently owns and operates 16 buses for the Transportation Service Program. Whereas the Golden Ring Foundation currently has 3 buses that were recently purchased using the Federal Transportation Administration 5310 program. And whereas the federal grant mandates each entity maintain a written policy adhering to Americans and Disabilities Act. Whereas the Mobility and Vehicles Committee recommended revisions to the ADA policy on March 3rd of 2020, now therefore be it resolved July 7th, 2020, that the Board of Directors of this corporation hereby adopts the revisions to Americans with Disability Act transportation policy, and resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out this resolution. May was the initial notification. In June, it was reintroduced again. The 28-day notification for member review and comment to comply with Civil Code 4360 has now been satisfied. And before I move to accept this motion, Kelly Richardson worked tirelessly along with Chris from Transportation to put this ADA policy together. So I move to adopt this resolution.
Second that motion.
Is there a second? Okay.
Egon.
Second that motion.
Okay, that Egon second. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
Yes, there is, for me. I noticed that there is no provision for the situation that we've just encountered, which is the pandemic, and the fact that the regular schedule has been modified due to the pandemic, and there's no provision in here that basically allows for that.
I really don't know at this point in time if I'd have to go over the whole resolution again and the whole policy. I know that as I recall, practically every situation was addressed. A lot of it had to do with behavior, and my thinking is that if the state, basically says that we have to wear masks, that any policy for the pandemic would apply to anybody using the buses or transportation.
I'm not referring to masks. If you read holiday closures, okay, the second paragraph says that the management services, that transportation may run a limited bus service on President's Day, Memorial Day, and so on. But now we have a situation where it's not a holiday, okay, but we are now running a limited bus service. But there is no provision here for that to be done.
Have any comment, Kelly?
I do. Okay.
Yes. First of all, in fairness to Chris Lagenauer and I, this was drafted, I believe, in March before everything got crazy here in California. So we hadn't anticipated the pandemic. Secondly, though, I think that the management and the association have the ability to adopt emergency policies just as are being adopted with a number of other amenities and services in the village. So I don't know that you need to specifically have in this ADA policy this ADA policy also is to satisfy the funding requirements, the grant requirements from the government. That's the primary purpose of it. So I think you're okay. Chris, I see is logged on. He can speak for himself. Hey, Chris.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, maybe you can speak to under suspension of services. Can you explain? I think we could add in there something about, I believe you were requesting that the bus riders wear masks or they could not get on the bus. Is that something that could be under suspension? How are you dealing with the pandemic mask situation for the bus riders as far as this policy goes?
Well, right now, that is just a temporary requirement based on the county and state requirements. This ADA policy is more of a long-term policy, so I don't see the mask being continued forever. So I really would not want to incorporate it in the generic ADA policy.
Good point. Yeah, I didn't think of that. Kelly?
Same. Yeah, this is an ongoing permanent policy, and I don't think you want to embed in it things that are designed to be temporary.
Bert, does that answer your question?
That answers it.
Okay, then we're probably good to go, Madam President.
No. If there's no further discussion, are there any, and there are no objections? Are there any objections? Okay. So if there's no objections, the motion passes. And they have finished, and I'll repeat, we have completed the 28-day requirement, okay? So the next item on the agenda is the emergency joint resolution. At this point in time, I cannot ask for a motion to approve it because GRF has already addressed this resolution and it failed twice. So all I can say is it's unfinished business. It's basically discussion. Do you agree with that, Judith? Because we can't make a motion here.
Yeah, correct. We are not asking for reconsideration because that would be in 12C. So, but unless we ask for reconsideration, it shouldn't be on the agenda at all. And I don't think anyone asked for reconsideration on this item that we, like you said, voted and passed actually almost 3 times. So that was my comment.
That was my comment too. So basically, I'm a little bit of a loss here, but I would think that we would vote to remove this from 12C, based upon the fact that GRF has already voted on this resolution twice. And Judith will be able to provide the minutes. Everything went on so fast, that I think that there was a lot of confusion based upon the urgency to get this through. So the only thing I'm going to ask at this point in time, because Andre, I think, wanted to speak to it, to allow him to speak in regards to this joint resolution.
Bert wants to speak first, and then I'd like to speak before you go to the dais, or before you go to the podium.
Okay, that's great. All right. All right, who's first? Because I can't see anything here.
Bert's first.
Bert.
With regard to wearing of the mask, I think the county has already dealt with that, has had the state. There is a policy in place with regard to wearing of masks, and I think we're certainly in accordance with that. I was interested in trying to find out from VMS, how do they propose to enforce this ruling? Jeff, can you answer that?
Well, I can, Bert, and to the board, depending on the specifics of the question. If it's with regards to the masks and wearing of the mask and the social distancing, the enforcement of the policy is directed to the individual and where that individual resides, if they are a United resident or if they are a third resident. So the situation as it's been created under the resolution is that the individual potentially could be cited if they're in noncompliance with the rule, and that noncompliance could create this scenario of a citation. That citation would be issued by United if it's a United resident, by third if it's a third resident, and then the enforcement process or the hearing process would be similar to a traffic violation, which would be incurred through third hearing or a United hearing.
How does the security officer determine who the person is? Suppose the person says, none of your business.
Well, that is that could be a problematic situation if we can't get compliance from the individual. Then we would have to look at the alternative of saying that you're in violation of either United or Third. As a resident of the community, you are in violation. Then at that point in time, once the hearing were to come about, we would issue the citation to the individual, and then if necessary, the citation would occur. And then at that point in time, when it would become a hearing process, we would have to figure out how to contact that person to make sure that they have their appropriate hearing.
I'm just not sure that it can work. Okay, thank you.
Okay, my comments are, I did send everybody a copy of the minutes I put together for the 2 email meetings, and I just forwarded Kelly a copy of the minutes for the 27th and then 8th, and then the second email meeting for the 29th. And I spent 2 hours. I took all of the emails, put them on a board in chronological order. The forensic evidence does not lie. That is the order and the time even by which everybody voted. If someone didn't use a yes vote and they wanted me to read their mind, then they needed to put something in writing. But if their statement was an affirmation, that only happened in one case. Everybody else, it was an email with a definite yes or no. My emails will stand up in court as far as the chronological time went, but we'll read them in closed session because those were closed meetings. So, President Carpenter was right. The first meeting on the 26th, staff took the minutes. I signed those minutes, and it was a definite no. So we voted on the issue 2 more times. On the 27th, 28th, it was a 2-day thing, and then again on the 29th, the 3rd time. So we voted on it 3 times, and it was no all 3 times. So we'll decide at the closed meeting if we want to keep pursuing this until it's acceptable or not to everyone. So that's my only comment there. Thank you. Now
Is there any other comments?
I have some comments, Bunny, if I may.
And who am I speaking to?
Egon.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Okay, my first question is the question of the 10 people meeting. And specifically, the creek comes up over and over, but this is 10 people anywhere. If people are down there in separate groups, distance often by 50 feet, not just 6, if you count just 10 people, if 11 comes along, they're in violation. So first of all of them in violation, even though they may not see each other. The 10 people meeting group must be defined clearly so that the people who are coming can understand when there is, and so that if security wants to cite someone, they have a basis on which they can understand that indeed someone is in violation. So that's my first comment. Secondly, at the beginning of the meeting, when under the CEO comments, Jeff gave us a number of Orange County, and I don't have any problem with those. I do want to make this comment. I would not want people to hear the word emergency and say that we are in immediate risk of something terrible happening, like a flood is coming or a tornado. That's an emergency. Most of the increase in cases that have been come about, both in the state of California and Orange, have been due to much increased testing. Okay. The state of California death rate has been flat since the end of April. Testing has gone up tenfold, and hence the cases have gone up approximately the same way. So, in addition, if you look at the map under Orange County Health COVID, you will see that almost all of the big increases in Orange County are in the North County, primarily Santa Ana, Anaheim, and the surrounding communities. To a community, South Orange County has very small circles, and they're all about the same size, meaning that we are in a very low case area for this. And I would like to so that they do not feel all of a sudden something terrible is happening. And the reason I'm concerned about that is because when people hear an emergency and it is not clearly defined what the emergency is, then they fill in the blanks and it creates even more fear. And my own observation from people throughout the community is that there's been a lot of fear, and some of it quite unnecessary. People need to discuss this thing with their doctor, and things will become much more clear for them. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Are there any other comments?
Oh, I don't know if you could see in the chat box. Now, this does not require a motion or a vote. It was moved here only for discussion purposes, and therefore, if there's no more discussion, we move on to the next thing, 13. So there's
okay.
Required, but you have other people wanting to speak. Like I see Stephanie's raising her hand.
Like Stephanie wants to speak. Okay.
I put my name in first.
Okay, Andre. I recognize you both. Okay, let's go ahead, Andre first.
Yes, I'm kind of echoing Egon's statement. Yesterday, I was there at the creek. There was a musician play there. There were about 15 people there, sitting separate far apart. Security came, and I got a notice from one of the residents telling me that they were playing music there. And last week, up to Sunday, I've been telling people said there will be no music allowed in that area. Okay, I told them don't bother to come. And yesterday there were a musician playing there, and people said, told me, see, we told you there will be music here, and I really feel my credibility has been totally lost there. Okay, security came over, and I asked them, what's the situation? Security said, well, nobody's causing any problem. Everybody's sitting apart, and also putting on face masks, nothing to sight. I said, what about large people gathering? Well, they never heard of that. There was none of their instruction. So I am kind of confused. What kind of message are we supposed to send to the residents? It says large gathering. How do you define large gathering? If a musician started to play and people started gathering around voluntarily, there's no announcement anywhere. At least as far as I can tell, there's no announcement anywhere. What are we supposed to do? We need to define it clearly. I am helping all the board sending out consistent message out there. Turned out our execution is not consistent. That made a liar out of me, and I feel very upset about the situation. Okay, please make sure your resolution is enforceable and it's consistent with the execution. Don't leave us helping you spread the word around. Turn out we don't know what we're talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andre. Stephanie, are you there? Stephanie was the next speaker.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say congratulations to GRF for keeping a head about this. And in my opinion, I'm speaking as a resident here only, no other hat. I think it's the only board that have, of course, BMS board didn't vote, but Third and Mutual and the Towers all voted this in under the emergency powers that they have under Davis Sterling. And I think that's very, very, very dangerous because this, as Egon was just saying, when you use the word emergency, people are frightened, and there's enough hype and fright that's being spread in the media, and there's the perspective that we need is not being provided. And I'll just challenge Jeff a little bit, like Egon did, that when you mentioned that the gross increase in numbers, without putting it in the perspective of the significant increase in testing. There's never any mention of recoveries, how many people have recovered in Orange County, what percentage of people are even hospitalized. When you mention ICU beds and hospital beds, we're not even told whether they're COVID related. There's also no percentage of how many beds are still available. And I just looked online and there's 5,000 additional beds available on a surge if we need it, which we've never had to tap. So there's a lot of perspective that will keep people's panic from going up, and yet there's very little focus on the perspective. There's a lot of focus on the panic. And I disagree with the use of the emergency power. It deprives the residents of their right to give input. 18,000 residents have something imposed on them by an overnight rapid-fire resolution. And I just want to challenge you, Bert, because you said the city and the county have already done it, or the county and the state have already done it. No, they have not. They have in place when you're outdoors and you cannot maintain a 6-foot distance, then you put your mask on, which is what we've been doing. If you go down a sidewalk and you're going to come close with somebody, you put on your mask or you move out of the way. Here, it says every public area, whether it's going from your house to your car with nobody within thousands of feet, whether it's going to your the parking lot, whether I'm at the equestrian center at 9 o'clock at night, and the security comes up and gives me a ticket. They do that it puts them in a very difficult position because there's nobody there at 9 o'clock at night besides me and the horses. So if I'm there doing my chores and letting my horses run, and I get tickets 3 times in a row, under this provision, I can be restricted from getting to my own manor. Now that's absurd. Who are these people that have put this in place? Over 18,000 people in this community. I tell you what, when I read the article in the Orange County Register, I said to myself, you know what? 2.5 years ago when I was looking to buy into this community, I looked at articles. I searched articles, and I searched social media. I wanted to see what people were saying about Laguna Woods Village. And I will tell you, if I saw this article at that time, no matter how much I love the mayor that I'm in now, I would have turned my back and walked away and said, who do these people think they are, that they can tell me I can't walk within more than, 1,000 feet away from anybody else without having a mask on, or I'm going to be penalized. First financially, and then with restriction to access. Now, the state has an order, and you have to put the mask on if you cannot maintain 6-foot distance. The county has the same thing. It's not mandatory. It was, but the woman who put it in place with mandatory provisions, which has resigned and has now been backed off to advisory. And the city of Laguna Woods debated this pretty vigorously and declined to put it in place without the short of this, making it mandatory. So what this emergency board, this gathering of emergency, whoever it was, the presidents only, it wasn't even the entire board, whoever put this through, it's a small handful of people that have pushed this through on 18,000 residents, and I think it is. Then to require me to put a fabric on my face that's not approved by the FDA or OSHA or NYSHA or whoever else, NIOSH or whoever does the approvals, we're putting fabrics that have dye in them and that have different kinds of drawings on them and different kinds of articles and fabrics. People are cutting up vacuum cleaner bags and putting them in as filters, only to find there's fiberglass that's getting sucked into their lungs from some of these bags. This is very dangerous. None of these, we cannot get the masks that are approved because they're all going to the medical personnel as they should. So to force us as a community to put things over our nose and mouth when we're not even within 6 feet of anybody else, which is what the science is, then, and none of it is regulated. I tell you what, I cough after I take my mask off because I've been breathing through fabric that's not approved to be breathed through. And I saw in the video people sitting on the ground putting masks together. The paper mask is on the ground and it's being folded into an accordion and it's being shipped out for us to put on our mouth and nose. Come on. This is crazy. It's just crazy. So kudos to GRF for not approving this crazy push through in the middle of the night emergency order, which I think is an abuse of the power of Davis Sterling. I'll stop. Thank you.
Okay, we have several people that want to speak, so I'm not sure who's first. There's, on top of my screen, I see Judith, I see Bert, and I see Ralph.
I'm on the chat. What about the chat?
Yeah, you have to look at the chat. I'll give way to Elsie. And then I'll go after that.
Okay. All right. I think Elsie was first because she was on the chat.
I appreciate that. And first of all, while I appreciate everything Director Brown had to say, I don't know about where you live, but where we live, and my board, which is United, we get a lot of complaints about people not wearing masks, and this has been right along. And I personally have seen a lot of people not wearing masks when they should be. I mean, when they're less than 6 feet from people. And I think if everybody had complied and gone along with the program instead of resisting it so seriously, we might not have had to institute these, excuse the word, emergency measures. And I'm a little confused, though. Oh, wait, so I already said that. So that's why things had to get stricter, I think, is because people were not complying. Oh, yeah, and there was some kind of a ruckus down at the creek during one of the concerts recently, right before this whole thing tightened up. And I understand from a person who was there that there were actually hands being laid on people, and one woman was body shamed and called really, really bad homophobic names because she asked people to put on masks, and she was verbally attacked, and some hands were even laid. I mean, this is crazy behavior because she was, you talk about crazy, and I don't know, I wasn't there, but the person I talked to was there, and she was very disappointed and very scared and very hurt that her neighbors could actually get into some kind of a ruckus over who was wearing a mask and who wasn't. And this is not the way we like to live. But I understand what Stephanie's saying, and I agree. I don't like wearing masks. And anybody who's putting a filter from some people just really need to learn the hard way, I guess. That's crazy, putting an asbestos filter in. I wouldn't even consider it. But I'm a little confused. So now, is this thing that you guys voted no on? I remember in our board, we voted on it wasn't exactly a resolution, but it was an emergency thing that involved gatherings of over 10 people, and also, you can help me here, Sue, and also the mandatory mask wearing. And I thought that was the rule. So I'm like Andre, I told everybody that was going to happen starting, this last Monday. And so, did you guys not vote for that? Or what did you vote no for 3 times on, Bunny? Can't hear you.
It was the same resolution that was presented to the other boards.
So
and it was turned down. It was voted against.
So if you guys voted against it, then what about third? Did they pass it or not?
They passed it.
So what's the deal? So if people it's okay for them not to wear a mask when they're on GRF property, but they have to do it on United and Third property?
No, because the way the resolution reads is if you're walking anywhere, okay, if you're anywhere and you are a United or you're a Third resident, you can be ticketed for masks.
Oh, okay.
That part,
so the resolution.
yeah, so that part has nothing to do with GRF. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to get that clear because this is the first I've heard. So thank you very much. And the same thing with the gatherings, right?
Yeah. Right.
The gatherings, that's probably a big question. Because, that's a question that I can't answer right now. All right, so who's the next person? Is it Bert? Is it Ralph?
Well, I was next, and then Bert can speak, and Ralph. So I have Ralph, Bert, and Ralph.
Okay, and then Egon. Okay.
So I was just going to say, remind everyone that Stephanie is a GRF representative on the VMS board, and right now she is my new best hero. And that's all I want to say. And Bert will go next, and then Ralph.
Okay. What I have to say is pretty, I don't know. When you step outdoors from your unit, it is my belief that you should be carrying a mask, not necessarily wearing it, but you certainly should be carrying one. Okay, and it should only be worn, or should only be required to be worn, within several feet of other persons. And, you know, when you say we don't want to scare people in this community, well, I think they need to be scared. First of all, 60% of all of the deaths are for people over 60 years of age. That's on the papers. Secondly, the number of deaths is being understated by 28%, according to analysis of the overall deaths that are occurring. So these are two very, very serious sets of numbers. And with this aging community, it's even more serious, and they ought to be scared. So, I had a situation, I think I wrote Jeff about this. I came out of a mail room in the 3-story building the other day, and I had my mask with me. I opened the door, and there was a security officer loading up the blankets from the elevator onto his truck with no mask. And I put my mask up immediately, and I said to him, where is your mask? And he said, it's in the cab of the truck. Well, being in the cab of the truck is not sufficient. We have to personally carry masks. And I think that that's something that we can say. That's all I have to say.
Okay. And the next person
is Ralph.
Ralph.
And then we have Kelly Richardson. And after that, Andre is requesting to speak for the 4th time on the same item. And I don't believe he should be allowed to speak 3 times on the same item. So we'll go to Ralph and then Kelly. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start out saying, first of all, I do the best I can to keep the average age of this community well above 70, okay? I would agree completely with Stephanie and Bert both as far as wearing a mask outside. If you're within 3 feet or within 6 feet or 20 feet of somebody, fine, put your mask on. Carry it with you and put it on, but otherwise outside, the fresh air is the best thing you can have. Secondly, one thing I don't want to see, and it seems that it's left up to other neighbors to report to you, I don't want to see this turn into a community of tattletales. And finally, I would comment about the creek area. I've never been down there. I've seen it, but I mean, as far as the music concerts and so forth, that's entirely up to GRF. It's GRF property. If they want to say no concerts, that's up to them to say. If they want to define the spacing and so forth, why not make it? I like the idea of circles, and circles maybe 10 feet apart. That might be a good idea, but that's up to GRF. That's about all I have to say.
Okay, now I have Kelly Richardson and then Elsie Addington.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Bert Maldell.
I don't know that there were any questions for me. I apologize if I seem to be asking to get in line. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to respond, but there's not a motion on the floor, so I don't really have anything to add, I think, at this point.
Okay, so then we have Bert and then Elsie. Oh, Egon, you wait. Oh, I see Yvonne's hand is up. I'm going to put her on the list.
Okay, so I just wanted to make a comment. I'm not opposed to the word emergency. What I wanted to point out is what it does. It creates fear, and fear creates stress. And stress is the big killer that we've been told for all of our lives. It causes high blood pressure and all kinds of health problems. Okay. Nationally, we keep hearing stories about how unintended consequences are creating great problems within things like drug use, overdoses, and suicides. Fear creates people go try to have suicides. And Laguna Woods is already at the high end of the suicide rate for Orange County. I would not want to introduce fear to the community. This was brought up earlier in the meeting. We're still having in-house meetings in the boardroom. Lady came up and talked extensively about fear and what we should do about suicides and what we should do. And that is one of my concerns about, because people don't understand what's going on, so it creates irrational fear. The other one is that, of course, stress, there are already a lot of fragile health. We don't want to push those. And that's mainly what I'm concerned about. I like statements of reassurance and positive. I have nothing against wearing masks and requiring. Thank you.
Okay, now we have Yvonne. Next. Yvonne Horton, we need your mic. Where are you?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. First of all, Bunny Carpenter and I walked the creek and followed the white stakes as Bert recommended. And, half of that property is GRF. Where the band plays is GRF property. But where everybody sits and dances happens to be United. So, and right now, we have voted down the wearing of masks. So, doesn't that fall under staff to make the decisions whether they should have bands playing there or not? Just a question. Maybe Jeff could give an answer to that. Thank you.
I'll speak. Okay. I can see Jeff is wondering how to answer that. But one of the things that under the trust, okay, GRF has a responsibility as a trustee, okay, to maintain and especially to maintain GRF trust properties, okay. So one of the things that in the latest recreation policy was basically is that staff has the last word when it comes to safety. So basically, through that, with the last word in the policy and the fact that the corporate members voted, to have staff basically manage the COVID-19 pandemic, it would be up to staff to determine whether it was safe or not for the bands to be on that property. So that's all I got to say because I'm just a person that follows the rules, and I will always go to the rules in order to back me up for any decisions or any way that I would speak. So if staff feels that that it is a safety issue based upon the band playing there, then I want them to come before the board and we can discuss that issue. Okay? Is there any more comments?
Yeah, Jeff has his mic on, and then I'm calling for orders of the day. So Jeff,
well,
can you?
I have a question about.
No, you cannot, Andre. You cannot speak again. That would be the fourth time on the same issue. Jeff Parker has the floor, and then I'm calling orders of the day. That is not negotiable. Jeff Parker.
I just wanted to answer Yvonne's question to the extent that I can with regards to the resolution that was passed by United and Third had specific language with regards to prohibiting large gatherings. That is a different question than the one that Bunny's bringing back up, which is rules and regulations with regards to safety. So I want to make sure that everybody understands. Under the safety regulations, if we are going to kind of connect that to the state regulations with regards to social gatherings, that's one thing. If we're looking at a regulation with regards to playing of music and assuming that it's in a safe environment, that there is no regulations under our GRF policies that says you can't play music. So the issue with regards to the resolution was taking the resolution that had been adopted by the CDC, state, and Orange County that recommends highly that gatherings in senior communities, i.e. retirement communities, be no larger than 10 per gathering. So the implementation of that, Yvonne, to your question, is if it is determined that the gatherings that are occurring are on United's property, with the fact that United has opted to approve this resolution, then we could look at, from our staff perspective, enforcing that provision of the resolution. If those gatherings or activities are based on GRF property, there is no enforcement capability of the gathering situation due to the fact that GRF hasn't approved the resolution.
Except for the mask. United, right.
The mask is individual based on where you live, and that's
right. Right.
Okay, I call for orders of the day so we can return to 13A.
Okay. Thank you very much, Secretary. Let's go on to, we are now on 13A. Okay, here we go. New business. So I hear a motion. I'd like to hear a motion.
Okay, I'll read the resolution.
Okay, I hear a motion to adopt the resolution to reschedule the November 3rd, 2020 GRF regular board meeting to November 4th, 2020, because the date conflicts with the date scheduled for the 2020 election tabulation meeting for 3rd and United. So I need, please, Judith, please read the resolution.
Resolution 90-20-XX. Reschedule Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. Regular meeting to Wednesday, November 4th of 2020. Whereas pursuant to Section 6.5.3 of the Golden Rain Foundation bylaws, regular meetings of the Board of Directors shall be held on the first Tuesdays of each month at 9:30 a.m. unless otherwise scheduled by an adopted resolution. And whereas the November 2020 regular meeting of the Board of Directors of this corporation, scheduled for Tuesday, November 3rd of 2020, conflicts with the date selected for a 2020 election tabulation meeting for 3rd Laguna Hills Mutual and United Laguna Woods Mutual. Now therefore be it resolved, July 7th, 2020, the Board of Directors of this corporation hereby approves that the November regular meeting of the Board of Directors of this corporation shall be held on Wednesday, November 4th, 2020 at 9:30 a.m. in the Laguna Woods Village Community Center Boardroom, 24351 El Toro Road. Resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out the purpose of this resolution. I so move we pass this resolution.
Madam Chair, I don't think you need me anymore on the agenda. Am I right? I'll be happy to sign off unless you think you need me.
Bunny, we can't hear you. You good? There you go.
Okay, we'll see you in closed meeting.
Okay. And I need a second to my motion.
I just
Right.
did.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Are there any objections? Is there any discussion? No discussion? So if there are no objections, the motion passes. So the next item on the agenda is the GRF 2020 annual meeting, election schedule, and inspector of election services. So do I hear a motion to approve the proposed 2020 election schedule and appoint Unilect Corporation as the inspector of election for the election of directors? So Judith, please read the resolution.
Resolution 90-20-SX, approve inspector of election services. Whereas Civil Code 5110 and Corporations Code 7416 requires an association to select an independent third party as an inspector of elections, and whereas for transparency purposes and due to the number of ballots received, it is necessary to contract for an inspector of elections, and whereas an inspector of elections is used, among other tasks, to print and mail voter packages, inspect and tabulate ballots, and certify results. Now therefore be it resolved, July 7th, 2020, that the Board of Directors of Golden Wayne Foundation hereby approves single sourcing a contract to Unilect to perform inspectors of election services for the 2020 annual meeting of the corporate members. Resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are directed on behalf of the corporation to carry out this resolution. I so move to approve this resolution. I need a second.
I second it.
Thank you. Second. Bunny, we can't hear you. It's still red. There you go.
Okay, they have to do that for me. Okay, so it's been seconded, and is there any objections? Okay, so can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so if there are no objections, the motion passes. Okay, so for the next item, we will come to 13C, which is the GRF Recreation Department Policy, Small Clubs Fee, amended July initial notification, postponed, and it must postpone 28 days for member review and comment to comply with Civil Code 4360. So do I hear a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing a reduction in the annual fee for small clubs from $50 to $25? Judith, please read the resolution.
Resolution 90-19-39. Attachment 2. GRF Recreation Department Policy Revision for clubs, groups, and organizations. Whereas all the July Community Activities Committee, CAC meeting, staff recommended to approve staff recommendations to amend the GRF Recreation Department policy as it pertains to clubs, groups, organizations. Whereas Laguna Woods Village has 286 registered clubs within the community, which are afforded a variety of privileges upon approval of the Recreation Department. Priority rollover reservations, flyer posting at clubhouses, free village website use on the club page or event calendar or the village news, and free Globe subscriptions, village television airtime, message board and club storage, excluding Clubhouse 2. Whereas club bookings make up the majority of reservations each year, with 9,200 dates reserved versus 4,485 dates reserved by private parties in 2019. Whereas room availability is limited for private party reservations, members are turned away when inquiring about availability for memorials, birthdays, and anniversaries. Whereas at the May CAC meeting, an ad hoc review committee was formed to review and provide recommendations to the CAC at the July meeting. Whereas proposed amendments to the current policy are limit club status to 250 clubs, groups, organizations, initiate annual clubs, groups, organizations fee to $50 to maintain club status, apply a rollover processing fee, which will be calculated by dates, to annual billings, limit rollover dates to 104 per club, organization, or group, and additional reservations are available through the standard lottery process. Club activities, programs, and events geared totally towards minors are prohibited. Whereas limiting club status and applying rollover restrictions will free up approximately 477 rental slots for private party use, and additionally, implementing a processing fee will offset incurred administrative costs. Whereas anticipated annual revenue generated from proposed fees is $20,750, and now therefore be it resolved September 3rd of 2019 that the Board of Directors of this corporation hereby adopts approval of the staff recommendation to amend the GRF Recreation Department policy as it pertains to clubs, groups, and organizations. Resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out this resolution. The 28-day notification of member review and comments to comply with Section 4360 has been satisfied. Director Milliman made a motion to adopt the resolution and revise the GRF recreation policy on clubs, groups, and organizations, and Director Soul seconded that motion. So I think that was all put in there by accident and has nothing to do with this resolution. So I move that we adopt this resolution for the new Recreation Department policy revision. Need a second.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
I got a second.
That's with
Okay,
amendment,
thanks.
right, Judith?
Yes,
With the amendment.
correct.
Is there any discussion? No discussion? Okay, are there any objections? So if there are no objections, the motion passes. Okay, so basically we're at a point, does everyone need to have a break? I sure do, for about 5 minutes. And so if we could come back, my clock says 11:49. If we can come back, in 5 minutes, I'll be ready to start again. Okay? Does anyone else want to take a break? No, just me, huh? Okay.
I do.
Okay, thank you. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
Yes, I just want to point out, Madam President, that the resolution I just read included the amendment on the next page. And I didn't read that whole thing. I will if I have to, but everybody has it. What I read was the background and what was changed. So page 17 of 18 is the amendment. If I have to read that, I will, but otherwise, that's what was approved.
And the change was only to the annual fee for the small clubs from $50 to $25.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
So thank you very much. All right. So I think we're ready to proceed to the committee reports. So Judith agreed to report for the Finance Committee.
Okay. Okay, first a financial report for the committee. The Finance Committee met on June 17th at 1:30 p.m. It was a virtual meeting. We discussed the small club fees, which we just talked about today. In other words, clubs with around 50 members or less. We discussed how the fees going forward will be prorated to adjust any new fee changes in the future. And this will go back to CAC. And what we were clarifying is small clubs like my own that only has 25 members already paid the $50 fee. What happens to clubs that haven't paid the fee yet and have not been able to meet because of the COVID? They're not going to charge them $50. They're only going to charge them the $25. Therefore, there'll be a prorated adjustment to clubs such as mine that already paid $50. And so maybe we'll get the second year for free to offset that. And that's what we talked about. We also looked over the finance charter, and there were some different thoughts on how to interpret the comments for the oversight of the charter. So going forward, as the boards change from year to year, it was recommended that the charter be reworded to reflect the intent of all the corporate members. So there will be a consistency between the directors and the boards from year to year, how the charter is interpreted and what oversight the financial committee does have. And so those were the things on discussion. And the next finance meeting, and if I find my agenda, let's see, would be August 19th, 2020 at 1:30 p.m. and of course will be a virtual meeting. And so now the financial report, and I'll be assisted by staff on the screen. Okay, slide 1. Through the reporting period of May 31st, 2020, total revenue for GRF was $18,300,000, compared to expenses of just over $15.9 million, resulting in net revenue of $2.4 million. Slide 2, please. In finance, we keep a close eye on the operating portion of our financial results. The operating fund, without exception, shows a favorable variance of $878,000 through the reporting period. Slide 3, please. This next chart shows the same actuals from the income statement, but compared to budget, GRF ended the period better than budget by $154,000, of which $751,000 was due to closure of facilities mid-March due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and $289,000 due to timing of other issues. Slide 4. This slide shows our most significant variances by category, with green bars representing favorable variances and orange bars representing unfavorable items. Favorable. Overall, we had unbudgeted revenue and fewer expenses that expected, with variances in the following categories. Number 1, employee compensation and related. We had $764,000 due to employee furloughs during the COVID-19 pandemic. 2, there was an unrealized gain on AFS investments of $563,000 due to reporting of an unrealized gain. An entry is made monthly to reflect investment market conditions, which do fluctuate. 3, materials and supplies, $194,000 favorable variance in several areas of operation due to timing of expenditures. Materials requested by clubs are budgeted in January, but expenditures will never occur later in the year. Additionally, many purchases delayed until facilities and services reopen. 4, outside services, $191,000 in several areas of operation, including aquatics and golf, due to shutdown of service mid-March. Golf is reopened in May, and aquatics will open in late June. So this report was written last week. Unfavorable. Some offsetting variances include: 1, golf green fees of $241,000 due to closure of facilities on March 12th due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Golf facilities reopened on May 11th and are opening at 78% capacity due to social distancing requirements. 2, trust facility fees, $232,000, fewer manors were sold. Year-to-date, revenue generated from the $5,000 transfer fee is 12% lower than budgeted. To date, 263 manors were sold versus a budget of 310, compared to 311 in 2019 for the same period. 3, insurance, $163,000, unfavorable, due to higher premiums at October 1st, 19 renewal for property and casualty insurance. Insurance premium increases were implemented after 2020 budget was finalized. Significant changes in the market conditions, catastrophic losses including wildfires in California, and non-renewal situations required a new layered program structure to achieve the existing limits in a tight market. 4, clubhouse rentals, $112,000 was due to closure of facilities on March 12th due to the COVID pandemic. Slide 5. We do have resources of revenues other than the assessments, such as fees and rentals. To date, we have received just over $5.2 million, as shown on this pie chart. By category, we can see that our largest revenue is broadband services. In other words, internet, set-top boxes, premium channels, followed by the facilities fees of $5,000 transfer from each resale. An unrealized gain for golf greens fees, operations like green fees, cart rentals, and so forth. These revenues offset costs and keep assessments down. Go to slide 6, please. Expenses to date are $15.9 million, including depreciation, as shown on the pie chart, with our largest categories being compensation, depreciation, cable programming, insurance, professional and legal services. Slide 7. We have a slide here to show resale history from 2018 to 2020. Community-wide sales total 263 through May of 2020. Most of these transactions generate the $5,000 trust fee, used as a source of revenue for our reserves. Slide 8. The reserve and contingency fund adjusted balances are shown here. Number 1, starting with the first column on the left, the funds have a combined ending balance of $31.6 million. Included in this total are contributions received this year through assessments, trust facility fees, and interest earnings. 2, the second column shows the work in progress of $8.9 million reflecting the amounts paid for projects not yet completed. And last, the third column represents the resulting adjusted fund balances of $22.7 million. Slide 9. Here we compare our adjusted fund balances to historical balances for the past 5 years. And on this next chart shows the GRF has averaged about $22 million in reserve and contingency funds. Slide 10. The listing on this slide gives us an idea where the reserve money is committed. Of the $24 million appropriated by the board for various projects and equipment purchases, the remaining encumbrances against our reserve and contingency funds is $10.9 million, primarily for renovation projects. That's it for the slides. I remind you that much more detail is provided in the GRF Finance Meeting agenda packets, which are available online and at GRF Finance Committee meetings. This concludes the financial report for GRF. Thank you. No. Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right. So the next item is the Purchasing Ad Hoc Committee, and which you know that I am the chair, and we have, you know, I have for a very long time been researching to find a consultant or lawyers that would be able to review our purchasing manual and some of our contracts. So far, I've only found one, and I presented a proposal for a consultant to purchasing and finance to be considered to review the purchasing manual, but I just did this recently, and so basically I have to talk with them and see what they think about this proposal, or if we should continue to look, you know, for someone to review it. So the next item is the report of the Community Activities Committee, and which I was acting chair in the absence of Joe Fitzcam. And so the committee met on June 11th, and the next committee meeting is August 13th at 1:30 as a virtual meeting. But July's meeting was canceled so that we could schedule the continuing Q&A of the trust presentation. So I just wanted to remind all the directors, put that on your calendar basically for July 9th, okay? So one of the things that the committee did was they reviewed the Greenfield outdoor fitness presentation on informal proposal, and basically it was an informal proposal for outdoor exercise equipment. Excuse me, and several of the members of the committee met at Murray Center to see their setup. Excuse me. So there was also a committee set up to discuss alternatives for the 2021 4th of July celebration. My throat is dry right now. So the next item would be the Equestrian Center Ad Hoc Committee, which and the report, the committee met on June 18th, 2020, and the next meeting will be held on July 15th, 2020 at 2 p.m. So at the next meeting, we will be discussing new riding programs and Adopt a Horse program. So the next report would be basically from Director Maldo for the report of the Landscape Committee. I need to go get a drink.
Again, the Landscape Committee did not meet, but the next meeting is scheduled for August the 12th at 1:30 p.m. And as we see, it'll be a virtual meeting. That's all I have to report.
Okay, so now we have the report of the M&C, which would be Egon. Egon?
Yes.
Okay.
The MNC did meet in June, and we discussed primarily the parking lot, the employees' parking lot, the hill behind the stables. We requested a very specific recommendation from Ernesto regarding the implementation of the solar light for that. We got back a much larger proposal to do a study on what was originally proposed, fencing and putting in electricity lines and all that stuff. So we're still reviewing that. I sent that proposal of work out to the rest of the committee, and I have not yet heard back from them. We also, I think, briefly discussed and then put on hold the padding at the gym in Clubhouse 1 on the room where they play paddleball and such. And the reason it was put on hold is we're going to discuss it again when we do our in-person tour of Clubhouse later in the month by, and I think that's going to be led by Bert Mulder. So our next meeting is scheduled in August, in front of the second week. So anyway, that's it for the.
Okay, Bunny, your speaker needs to be on. Next.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go with the PAC report. The last scheduled PAC meeting was on May 14th. From that meeting, a recommendation went to the GRF board to approve a contract for $5.5 million at the June 2nd GRF meeting. That recommendation failed with a 5-5 vote. So there was request after that to hold a special GRF meeting to reconsider the vote. Robert's rules stated that only someone from the winning side of the vote can reconsider in the same session. So therefore, the losing side called a special meeting on June 8th, which was properly done, and the vote to reconsider passed at that meeting. However, there is request from the CM corporate members to hold the contract award for only 2 weeks. President Carpenter honored that request. On June 22nd, a corporate meeting voted against the GRF's recommendation to sign a $5.5 million contract to renovate the PAC by an overwhelming 87% vote against the award. From there, I called a special PAC ad hoc meeting for July 13th to see where we wanted to direct staff next. But to set that agenda and prepare for that meeting, I called for a workshop on July 1st. During that workshop, together, 13 of us were able to set the agenda for July 13th special open meeting. That is an open meeting. So if you want to request a link, you need to contact staff. So jointly, we requested the following agenda items. This is going to be the agenda items on the 13th. We're going to review the PAC HVAC system that's currently installed and proposed a new system design. We're going to prioritize the PAC maintenance projects. We want to itemize which maintenance projects should be sent to M&C for review. We want to complete a completion of certain PAC projects with an independent contractor and a project manager, so we're going to consider that. We're going to identify reopening the scope of work for SVA-related items and non-committed funds for unpaid invoices to the architects. We're also going to compare the breakdown of SVA estimates and bid estimates. So an OSHA report was requested on that agenda, but staff said one does not exist, so that will not be on there. And also a request for a closed meeting immediately following the PAC meeting has been denied at this time because they said there was no contract to review. So I'm still working on that and get clarification. So I asked for a copy of what had been prepared for the contractor that was ready to be signed on the 17th of June. Again, the July 13th, 1 p.m. meeting is a virtual open meeting. Please contact staff for a link to attend that meeting and get a copy of the agenda. Thank you. That concludes my PAC report.
Thank you. And I think Clubhouse 1, I think that the only one that's left on that particular committee at this point in time is Egon. And I think you said that there was going to be a tour. We're basically waiting till after we have elections on this particular committee and how we're going to go forward. Do you have any comments, Egon?
I think it would be good to wait until after elections before we make that tour. It was actually scheduled for late in July anyway. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So next item is mobility and vehicles. Director Troutman.
Yes. It's not a real formal report. The last actual meeting we had was February 5th of 2020, and the next meeting will be August 5th, a virtual meeting at 1:30. And so if you want, it is an open meeting, just contact staff or myself if you want to attend that meeting. Right now, I just monthly communicate with Chris Langauer to find out what we've been doing with the buses. But Eileen's been doing such a good job of putting any changes with the buses in the news briefs that there was no reason to have a meeting. So that's one reason we really haven't had one, because there wasn't anything for us to do. Since bus riding is a social distancing issue, what they had to do with this newest resolution was cancel the fixed routes for at least 1 week because there were 2 employees that had contacted COVID. So I assure you, staff is keeping very close eyes on what's going on with the drivers and the riders. And we heard a little bit from Chris this morning as far as what they can enforce and what they cannot. And so my advice would, if you want any more details, since everything changes from day to day with the buses, they're keeping it current online. Just go to the residents portal and scroll down to GRF committees and M&V and read the Globe and the special news briefs that Siobhan and Eileen send out. Those are pretty up to date. That concludes my M&V report.
Okay, thank you. So the next one is Community Access Committee. Don Tibbet.
We canceled the meeting, and our next meeting is August 24th at 1:30. And I think Aiden had traffic hearings and has a report. Aiden?
Thanks, Don. Yes, I went to have a traffic hearing. It was virtual and therefore a difficult situation because the people that came to protest their fines or their tickets could not see the actual video on their screens. So we, as directors, could see them. So it was decided that the next meeting would be with distancing in the community center in the boardroom. But now, since that's been put off again, we will hold traffic when that comes open. So we'll let that go for a couple of months and then bring all the people in time after that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Do you have anything to say on disaster preparedness?
I do. I have a full report. The next meeting will be July 28th. It will be a virtual meeting. in just a couple of weeks. And since there was no new information considering the COVID emergency and or procedures being taken, and most of what we have been doing was by virtual meeting. So I consulted with Chief Rojas and for the next agenda prep, and he has agreed to the following items to be on the agenda. We are going to talk about cleaning the medical supply cabinets that are in the different clubhouses. The people responsible for those are those clubhouse coordinators. So we'll be discussing that. Then we're going to talk about improving the emergency operating plan. So again, I've been in touch with the company that we hired 4 years ago, Dave and Ellen, and to rewrite our original plan. What they suggested, Lopez and Associates, was to, because of the COVID, and nothing specific about a COVID or pandemic or a energy blackout or cyber terrorism and little things like that are not detailed in the EOP. He suggested we have an annex for each type of operating disaster that we might come across. And so this has to be a community-based input. It cannot be done by staff alone. It has to be everyone involved, directors and community. So it would be a big project, but it's necessary to get started on it as soon as possible because we already have seen the problems we ran into by trying to use the EOP we have in place now for a earthquake and trying to implement it into a COVID situation or a pandemic situation. So changes have to be made, revisions have to be made, and people are keeping track as we speak of where we need to make those revisions, where the weaknesses were and where the strengths were, and we have to get that annex to the EOP completed. So those of you that complain the most about what's going on with the COVID are the ones that really need to be at the disaster preparedness meeting, because that's where you're going to have your input, how staff and the directors going forward are going to handle other disasters that aren't earthquakes. And so that's the place to be heard, is at the disaster meeting. We're also going to talk about the shakeout, which of course will be different this year. It's scheduled for October 15th, but we won't be doing the full exercise like in the past. We also want to mention the annual summer barbecue that we always have to appreciate our good neighbor captains. So, of course, that'll be canceled or postponed. And I want to mention that the web page for the COVID versus rumors and facts. The purpose of this FEMA page is to help the public distinguish between rumors and facts regarding the response to coronavirus or COVID-19 pandemic. Rumors can easily circulate within communities during a crisis. Do your part to stop the spread of disinformation by doing 3 easy things. Don't automatically believe the rumors. Don't pass them along, and go to a trusted source of information to get the facts about the federal COVID response, such as the CDC or the FEMA webpage. When the governor first declared COVID a state of emergency in March, I was astonished to find out that so few directors were aware that we even had an emergency operating plan on our webpage, or that one even existed. Not even some of our own task force members knew this. Please bring your questions to the virtual meeting on the 28th. Our intention is to add to the annex of the EOP, directing staff in a better alternative way to deal with any pandemic or energy grid blackout or cyber terrorist attack, etc. It is not surprising that some of our largest complainers, I already said this, about the emergency disaster and how it was handled are the ones that never attend the disaster meetings. So this is your time to be heard and have your input on going forward. And we're also going to be looking for someone on the training subcommittee. We still have Catherine Matthews. Joan Brown is going to be resigning. We'll be there to help train, but Catherine needs someone else with her. Right now, we're not doing our first aid, CPR, ADA training because of the social distancing. And when we do them, they are done by an outsourced vendor, except the Good Neighborhood Captain training. That's done by our own task force members. So we are going to need someone to step up and volunteer when we do get up and running again, and I have no idea when that is. So that concludes my disaster preparedness report for July. Thank you.
Judith, when on the 28th, what time?
1 o'clock.
Thank you.
And Rhina, you should be getting something in the mail anyway from me for that.
Okay. So the next item is the Strategic Planning Committee. And this, the first meeting will be determined after we have elections. Right now, we don't have anybody on the committee. So let's go forward to the future agenda items. All matters listed under future agenda items are resolutions on the 28-day public review of items for a future board meeting. No action will be taken by the board on these agenda items at this meeting. The board will take action on these items at a future board meeting. So A is donation of Bahia Club of a bench for Aliso Creek and 2 Plumera trees at Clubhouse 6. And B is obsolete equipment. So the next item is director comments. Are there any director comments at this point in time? Okay. All right. If there are, pardon?
Let's go to lunch.
Okay, that's a good director comment. So we will recess. At this time, the meeting will recess for lunch and reconvene in executive session to discuss the following matters per Civil Code 4935. So let's see, are we going to recess for a half hour, right? And it's 12:27. So let's just say we'll reconvene at 1 o'clock. Does that meet with everybody, 1 o'clock?
I concur.
Okay. All right. We'll see you at 1 o'clock.